All right, good morning, good afternoon. It's Mr. Reed coming at you live. Um, Today's assignments are primarily focused on individual writing and then also continuing your lit circle groups. And today's video really isn't focused so much on that and more so on a larger overarching part of our course, which is our learner portfolio. Um, and when I say learner portfolio, I'm not referencing just blogs alone. I'm referencing your creative sections, your metacognitive sections, and for today in particular, your conceptual pages. A couple things I want to talk about with your conceptual pages is that we've been using these words curation, and we've been talking about intertextuality and transformation, and how when we use intertextuality, we are basically learning and observing other people's opinions and shaping our own meaning of text and just issues around us, some of which are global, some of which are transnational, which some are felt on a more local level. Um, and through that, we are able then to kind of go out and find examples of texts that are not associated with our literary text and create some new meaning. And that's really the basis of the curated conceptual part of your text here. And I want to talk just briefly about that today. Um, this comes directly from the IB guide about your learner portfolio. And just read real quickly. They will also be expected to establish connections between these works and previous ones that they have read, and between their perspectives and values as readers and those of their peers. As they progress through the syllabus, it is expected that these connections will be drawn between works within the and across areas of exploration, and that they will provide a foundation for the construction of broader knowledge about the transactions between text, culture, and identity. And can be broken down to a few things. The first one being is that when we read a text, we make meaning. When we look at a text through the scope of another text and how that text is influenced and how context shapes meaning, again, we're talking about things like time and space, and we're talking about things like intertextuality. And thus, we can create new meanings through interaction with other texts. And we can do this also when we have conversations as a whole class or when we are looking at other people's work. So throughout this semester, I've been asking you guys to check out some other students' work, because that is part of the learning process, right? Not just when I give you feedback, if you turn things in on time, but also just conversations that you're having. And the idea behind that is that you're able to expand on your sense of text, culture, and identity. And that's really where the learner portfolio comes into play, is that when you've had these conversations and you've gotten feedback from me because you've turned your work in on time, um, you're able to then compose and reflect on that and consider how it applies to your knowledge and where you're headed in terms of this course and how you can then activate and demonstrate some of your knowledge in other courses, but also in summatives that we're doing in this course, right? But also on a kind of a larger level, your interaction with the day-to-day world around you, right? This isn't just a course that focuses on English class. It goes way beyond that. Which then, case in point, the learner portfolio is also a space in which students can prepare for assessment. They will use the portfolio to make decisions about the most appropriate and productive connections between the works that they've studied in the assessment components. Right. So I've been asking you to curate your transformation page, and beyond that, um, I've assigned you work over the course of this entire year, whether it's a blog entry or metacognitive, or I've encouraged you to do some creative work. But I want you to see the learner portfolio as something more than just a place where you kind of reflect on some questions or a concept that I've introduced in this course. I really want you to see it as a space for you to be able to reflect um, individually and create some of your own meaning. So I've put some arrows here just to kind of give you some ideas about like looking at this. Some of this is very much self-assessment. Some of this is reflection on day-to-day or weekly courses, but they're very much focused on you and your ability and your interest and how you develop meaning. And so, not to downplay any of the ones that aren't arrows because they're all really good. This again comes from the IB course. These are just a couple of things that I want to talk about today. Um, and then finally, this one is also dealing with the exploration of literary texts and the insight they offer in terms of social, global, and real world issues, which is very prevalent to what we're doing in your Lit Circle groups. So the idea here is that I would like you for the remainder of this year and then also going into next year to curate all of your conceptual pages, right? Based on conversations that we're having, observations that you're making in your day-to-day life and experiences. To be frank, maybe about anywhere between 20 to 30% of content that I share with you is stuff that are connections that I make based off of my knowledge and understanding of this course and what the course's expectations are. Um, and so I would like to see you do that on your own, right? I obviously will continue to shell out examples of things that we're learning in class, but I want you to be able to find and use the learner portfolio as an opportunity and as a space to create new meaning. So what does that look like and how does that look? Well, next class, not this class, but next class, I'm going to ask you to continue to curate your transformation page. But in the meantime, something I would like you to go ahead and just read for me. This is our lesson for today. And then also there's some other stuff here. But you guys can go ahead and talk about that, or you guys can read that on your own. Go down to this document here, you click on it. Case in point, all of the sources I've been curating for over the course of the year, and then some new ones, and then some ones that I've collaborated with, they're all documented here. And there's even more, but these are just a couple that I feel are really appropriate to this course. Some of these we have actively reflected on, but a lot of these are new. And a lot of these I've just suggested, some things to check out to, again, develop your understanding of any one of our concepts. So over break, or even before break, take a moment to really read through some of these links. These aren't required reading by any means, but these are some suggestions on text that you can use to work into your curated sources. Your conceptual pages, right? And think about, again, like how for example, like how our knowledge and understanding of identity as a construct, how does that apply to the sources, these texts that I have given you? How is identity and culture being represented, right? Same thing with perspective. How is perspective being represented, and what does that tell us about identity, transformation, the way information is communicated, how communication pertains to transformation, creativity, right? The way information is creatively communicated to us, and how does that help us shape and understand meaning of a text? Last thing, this is the conceptual course guide for curated assistance, something I put together. Look, I'm going to show you this. You're probably looking at this and you're going, oh my God, this is just so dense. It's so much information. And absolutely it is, right? Because when you think about that, this is 2 years worth of information. So yes, it's a little dense. Please do not feel overwhelmed by this. This is here to help you. And the best way to go about doing this is when you decide, either if I assign you or kind of on your own, really, self-sustain here, when you want to curate a particular conceptual page, I'd like you to go ahead and read first. Let's say you decide you want to do some stuff on identity because you've seen something that really inspired you. Maybe you're watching Netflix or something on YouTube, or you read something or had a good conversation with a friend about something identity related. Read from the IB guide first. It's just kind of a brief explanation of what identity is when we talk about that in IB course. And then I've produced some questions for you to help you start, right? And this isn't the only questions, the only things I'm looking for. There's a lot more you could talk about, but just to get you started, here's just a selection of questions to help you out, extract and make meaning through the conceptual lens of identity. right? Same thing for culture, creativity, communication, etc. All right. Our next class is going to be focused on transformation. I'm going to ask you to do some curation. You've already done some of that, but again, some questions to help you get going, and just a quick explanation of what transformation is. And as you know, a lot of our concepts overlap. Sorry, they don't really overlap. They're connected to other concepts. So transformation has a lot to do with things like creativity or communication or perspective, right? So when you're curating your transformation page, check out some of the other concepts, right? Check out perspective or creativity or communication. They might help. Lastly, with that is when you are making sense of your text, always have in mind how you are making connections to larger global issues, right? So I've asked you to do this in your lit circle groups, looking at context, looking at how critical theory opens up different possible global issues. But always have this kind of in mind when you are curating any one of your sources and looking at any text. How are we making connections to some of the larger global connections, and why are we doing this? Why is it important in this course? All right. So in about 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and post a Zoom link, and we can have some conversations about today's lessons, which is blog number 12, and then also talking about critical theory in your Lit Circle group. Feel free to shoot me an email otherwise. Have a wonderful day.